Not as much, but somewhat.
Just like
maybe the emissions of carbon. Okay.
it's like an actual.
It's like what you leave on the earth. Your trash. And be like.
Tears come streaming.
The 10 hottest years ever measured. They've all occurred in the last 14 years.
Something we can't replace. When you love someone, it goes to waste.
Temperature increases are taking place all over the world, and that's causing stronger storms.
That was a straw. Just pretty painful to watch, I think, especially like when the images of towns getting destroyed and then the turtle that was like wrenching.
It was very powerful.
Eye-opening.
The things that humans are doing, it's ignorance.
The imagery in the video it just shows like how it's really impacting us.
There once was a time when everything was green and everything was clean, you could walk around. Yeah. Like I feel like I could really try to do something.
How do you want to like take this stand and try to fix this up?
No one that I know and including myself is informed about anything. So.
I just feel like hard work. Like you're not really going to do anything. You're not doing it.
Why don't you think you're going to do anything?
Because people, they're selfish. It's just, that's what the world is today. Like,
Do you think that everyone stops being selfish and starts to care that we can change people?
Well, I might think that other people will take it upon themselves to do something about it, so I won't have to. Like, the burden of responsibility will fall on like other people, and if everybody's thinking that, then nobody's going to do anything.
Yes, it's eye-opening. Yes, they feel sympathetic at that moment, but then they go back to their daily lives and it's an effect on them.
Alright, so after watching it, do you feel like you want to learn more about the environment?
Yeah.
So, do you want to learn more about the environment after watching this video?
of course.
And so you would want to learn more about the environment after watching this video?
We're gonna have to learn the hard way. One day we're gonna walk outside and start having heart attacks. People try to say, until that day, no, it's gonna be too late. Nobody ever gonna do anything until it's too late.
Welcome, students of Wooten. Every year, the Wooten Student Government Association produces a spring project to inform Wooten students of a prevalent issue in our community on a global scale. As you probably already know, this year's theme is environmental awareness. Usually, SGA members would have gone into English classes yesterday to present an in-depth lesson plan on this year's topic. However, because of the snow days earlier this year, we will be presenting on April 7th after spring break. Throughout this week, we set up informative displays in the Commons in order to elaborate on specific topics. On Monday, we focused on water usage and how much we waste. On Tuesday, we showed our daily activities and how they can contribute to air pollution and the greenhouse effect. On Wednesday, our focus was to raise awareness of deforestation and endangered species. And on Thursday, we concluded with the display of the recycling process and ways we can help solve these environmental issues. Whether you're passionate about saving our environment or any other issues you would like to bring awareness about, we encourage you to think about getting involved with the SGA. It's a great way to increase school spirit and give back to your community. Applications will be available this coming Monday, March 14th in room 153 with Mrs. Gresham. Today, we will complete the 2016 Spring Project with this assembly and a guest speaker, Dr. John Francis, to share his experiences in hopes that they will inspire you to take action. And now to Alicia to introduce Dr. John Francis. Now we would like to introduce to you Dr. John Francis, a renowned environmentalist and UN Environmentalist Ambassador who began his famous pilgrimage across North and South America in 1973 as he boycotted the use of motorized vehicles for nearly 22 years. Dr. Francis spent 17 of those years in voluntary silence, carrying a message of sustainable development and respect for our planet. Dr. Francis has since been nicknamed the Planet Walker for his efforts and founded the environmental program Planet Walk, whose core mission is to promote environmental education and spread Francis's message of environmental responsibility and ultimately create a sustainable future. Dr. Francis has appeared on TED and CNN's 60 Minutes, detailing his experiences as a Planet Walker, and is now here today to share his story with you. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. John Francis.
It's graduation time again, and you can be sure that there will be many speeches urging young people to go out there and change the world. And those same young people will be wondering, how? Well, tonight we have the story of one man who set about changing the world by first changing himself. Our story begins on a misty night in 1971 when two oil tankers collide beneath the Golden Gate Bridge, spilling more than 500,000 gallons of crude into the bay. At that time, John Francis was just another hippie living in West Marin County. But when he saw the oozing sludge and dying birds, he wanted to protest in a way that others thought was crazy. Francis wanted to stop riding in cars.
And I found myself on the road walking, and I said, well, I'm already walking here. I'm just going to keep walking.
With his banjo as his companion, John Francis challenged anyone who would listen to believe in his mission.
I found myself arguing with my friends if one person could make a difference by not riding in an automobile.
So he had another idea. To stop the arguments, he would simply stop talking.
I decided that I would stop speaking just for one day to give my community a gift of my silence, because John was a big talker.
This is Francis back then. He was 27 years old on the day he stopped talking in order to truly listen. That day's silence lasted 17 years.
When I first stopped speaking, I could hear all the conversations pretty much that I ever had. After about a month of not speaking, they soon went away.
Without the conversations, John had only to listen to himself, and what he heard disturbed him. He realized that he had been living a lie about who he was as a black man in a white world.
What I saw in the media was I could be a buffoon, or I could be a criminal, but could I be the person I am right now? And I didn't see that person. It took me to just stop talking until I said, oh my God, there you are. and then I just rediscovered who I was. And I didn't need to lie. Well, I couldn't lie because I didn't talk. I mean, I just couldn't do it.
Francis went from being this know-it-all to someone who wanted to know more. So he began a pilgrimage that left his footprints across the country.
John Francis. Linda Lindell.
Walked all the way.
I saw America. I heard America speak to me. And I was very taken by what my experience was.
What Francis didn't know at that time was that he was ahead of his time, on the forefront of what would become a movement, environmentalism. When he found that Southern Oregon University offered a new course in environmental studies, he walked to Ashland and enrolled. He then walked to Missoula, Montana to get a master's degree, eventually ending up at the University of Wisconsin to get his PhD. Along the way, he also taught a discussion class. Remember, all without speaking.
Sometimes I would make these signs like so. And then my class would sit around and go, what's he saying? What's he saying? No, I think he's talking about clear cutting. No, that's not clear cutting. He was using a handsaw, and he wouldn't clear cut with. You can clear cut with a handsaw. I think he's talking about selective forestry. And I would just kind of back out because this is a discussion class and let the discussion go on.
And Francis's education was evolving as well.
I thought environment was about human-made ugliness and pollution and endangered species. I started to realize that environment was really much more than that. That it involved, human rights and civil rights and economic equity and how we treat each other when we meet each other.
All along his journey from West Coast to East, the man who walked and didn't talk was being heard. In the 22 years he spent trekking across America, the once counterculture concept of environmentalism had become mainstream. By the time he arrived in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Coast Guard invited him to write pollution regulations for the nation's waterways, and the United Nations appointed him environmental ambassador.
I couldn't have dreamed that up. I couldn't have seen it. When people said, one person can't make a difference, I have to say there were doubts sometimes, as I was walking, and I am alone, and I am just a black man with a banjo walking across America. I think we just make that commitment to make the journey. And once we commit ourselves to doing it, we change. We change ourselves from just sitting on the fence thinking about it to actually jumping in the field and making a mad dash or a slow walk. And I think that's our journey. That's all of our journeys. I think each one of us has that journey, that potential in ourselves to do that.
John Francis just published a book called Planet Walker and is getting ready for another walk across the United States.
Hello, Wooten High School. Well, it's really great to be here today, and I want to thank the student government and Jennifer Taylor and who's that out there? And Georgia and Melanie and Andrew and everybody. I have a whole list I could, usually I start speaking by saying, thank you for being here. But I want to thank you for all getting me to be here. Yeah, and I want you to imagine, because this is in fact really that I walked here to come see you. That I walked for 22 years across the United States and South America, down the length of South America, all the way down to Tierra del Fuego. And it was a long walk, I'll tell you. But I drove my car, it's a Prius, one of those hybrid cars, from Cape May. That's where I live now. From Cape May, New Jersey, to Washington, D.C. last night, and then I came up this morning so that I could be here in time for your assembly. So I wanted to talk about environment. I mean, I just looked at that video, and the environmental illiteracy that some of you students had, that was me, because I knew nothing about environment before I started walking. The thing that I heard about, and I just heard about recycling and smog in Los Angeles. And I was living out in California, and I said, yeah, if somebody would have asked me about climate change or anything like that, I said, I know about recycling. But that was it. But what changed my life, was actually seeing an oil spill. Actually seeing the oil wash up on the shore and smelling the oil. And when I got in my car to drive away, I was with my girlfriend Jean, who had come down to watch the oil wash up on the shore with me. We wanted to see that spill. And I had driven down. I said, honey, you see that spill yet? No, John, I don't see it. Jean didn't really talk that way, but that's what I call theatrical advice for theater majors here. We couldn't see the spill, but we could smell it because of the cloud cover. And once we saw that spill, we decided that we had to do something. And I said to Jean, I said, well, we could walk. I don't think Jean really appreciated that walking part. I said, we could walk because look, we're driving these automobiles and it's oil. We want to get oil fast and we spill it. Let's walk. But Jean told me, she said, now look, we can't walk because we don't have any money. And this is a sign I used back then when I didn't talk. I'll get to that. We don't have any money. And people just think we're a bunch of hippies if we're walking. She said, wait till we get some money. Wait till the ship comes in. And when we get some money, then we can walk. Now, this was way before Forrest Gump, see? He was a runner. Same kind of movements. But what happened was, I just put that away. I said, yeah, wait till we get money because we can't afford to walk. I can't afford to walk. I don't have enough money to walk. A friend died in my town. He was a deputy sheriff, Jerry Tanner. But we lived in such a little town, even though he was always picking these plants out of our yard and getting rid rid of them for us. So the sheriff's out there weeding our yard, dear. Well, I don't want to go into that except to say that Jean believed in this kind of weed that she could inhale. And Deputy Sheriff was out there weeding the yard all the time. But we all lived in this little town. There's only 350 of us in this little town, so we all got along very well, even though the Deputy Sheriff was an agriculturalist. And when he passed away, he had an accident in a little bay out in front of our town where we lived called Tamales Bay. And when he died, we went on a walk to celebrate his life. We actually picked some peas from our garden, gave it to his mother, said we were sorry for your loss, and we went on a 20-mile walk. How many of you have walked 20 miles? Let me see from your hands. Wow. There's about 20 of you that have walked 20 miles. That's pretty good. Maybe a few more. I see you back there. I got you. Well, we wanted to go hear some music over the hill 20 miles away, and we left in the afternoon, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you know anything about walking 20 miles, you know that we didn't get there until the next morning. And the music was all over, and we were going to walk back. And we started walking back, and it was on that walk back, I said to Jean, I said, you know, we're walking right now. And she said, yeah, we are. I said, and I think I'm going to keep walking because Jerry, you know, he was the same age as me, and, you know, he had everything. He had a job, he had just all the kinds of things you could imagine. A house, a white picket fence around the... I said, I want to keep walking. And she said, well, you know, you can do that, you know, you can keep walking. I said, because if Jerry had everything and he's the same age as me, and I was about 26 years old, I said, you don't know when you're going to die. And she said, well, that's true. I said, so you don't know when the money's going to come. She said, well, that's true too. I said, well, if you don't know when the money's going to come, then you don't know when we're going to start walking. But we're walking right now. I'm just going to keep walking. She said, well, bye, John. She wasn't that cool, you know. And so I started walking, and I kept walking. And people in my little town, they thought I was crazy. They said, John, what are you doing? And I said, I'm walking for the environment. Now, I didn't know very much about the environment. It's about water pollution, and the birds are dying, and people were crying to see birds die, and oil wash up on their beach. And so they thought I was crazy. They said, John, that's not going to do anything. I found out I was arguing so much about what I was doing and why I was doing it that I really just spent my time arguing. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? On my birthday, I'm going to turn 27 years old. I'm just going to stop speaking for one day. Just one day. I had already called my mom and dad, told them I walked. They're back in Philadelphia, and I said, Mom, Dad, I gave up riding in cars. My dad wanted to know why I didn't do that when I was 16. I didn't know about the environment then. The environment, they said, what's that? It's something out in California. Those hippies. So I decided I'd stop talking for one day, and I did. I didn't talk for one day. And this is kind of important for me because the things that happened, I mean, walking was a big step, but not talking, that really changed everything. And the thing that had changed, what happened, I realized that I had not been listening to anybody. That I thought I knew everything that there was to know. And that someone would say something to me, and all I would do was listen just enough to think that I knew what they were going to say, and then I'd stop listening to them. And I'd start thinking in my own mind what I was going to say back to them to show them that they were wrong, I knew the right answer, and if it was something that I already knew, I could say it in a better way. And of course that ended communication. other thing I learned is that if I listen to something and it was something I didn't know or something I hadn't heard before, I might learn something, because if I was learning something, it was probably something I didn't know. Seems to make sense, but I don't know why I didn't think of that before. So I started learning things, and I started learning things about myself. Well, one thing that I had a problem with that I learned right away is that it was really hard for me to lie. I just couldn't do it. I just could talk, but now I couldn't even do that. So I really started listening to people, and I started learning more and more and more and more and more, and the next day I said, I want to learn more. So it was 17 years that I didn't speak, and went to school and got my degree, and I got all the way to the East Coast of the United States. I wrote my mom and dad, of course, about not speaking, because I didn't give them phone calls, Hi, Mom, Dad. No, I didn't do that anymore. And so I wrote my mother, and my mother said, you're crazy. And your dad's going to be out on the next plane. Well, my dad came out to California, and he did visit me. And he got on the phone and said, yeah, he's okay. No, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs. I don't know. I can't tell him not to do this because it's not hurting anybody. Says he's doing it for the environment. He wrote it down. Yeah, he does some kind of sign language, but I don't understand it. No, this wouldn't work back in Philadelphia. So they left me out there in California, and I walked across the country, stopping to go to school. By the time I got to the East Coast, I said to my dad, I will get to the East Coast and things will be different. Yeah, right. I first went to school in Oregon. My dad came to the graduation and he said, son, listen, we're really proud of you, but what are you going to do with a bachelor's degree? You don't ride in cars and talk. I hunched my shoulders, I put my backpack on, grabbed my banjo, I walked all the way to Montana. I got a master's degree. My dad came out for the graduation. He said, son, what are you going to do with this? You have a master's degree. Look, we're really proud, but, what are you going to do with a master's degree? You don't ride in cars and talk. I walked all the way to Wisconsin, and there I worked on my PhD. My dad came out to visit me before I graduated. He looked around and he said, my sister said I should just leave you alone because you seem to be doing so much better when you're not talking. He was right. And then I walked all the way to the East Coast, and then I started speaking. And when I started speaking, my mother jumped up from out in the audience because I had invited everybody to hear me speak, and she jumped up and she said, no, your Johnny's talking. My father said, that's one, because he always wanted me to get in the car. So that was one. And me, I turned around because I hadn't recognized my voice. I hadn't heard it in such a long time. I didn't know it was me that was talking. And so I started laughing. I realized that was me talking. And I was chuckling up there on stage. My dad looked at me and he goes, yeah, he really is crazy. Look at him up there. Well, as you saw in this video, I went on to become a UN Goodwill Ambassador and was hired by the Coast Guard to help write regulations for the United States. And I guess I want to say that if someone had said to me, John, if you want to make a difference, I want you to follow whatever passion you have. Follow whatever feels good, whatever feels right. It might be crazy. Like, yeah, why don't you just go walk across the United States? Get out of your car and start walking. And as I walked off a little bit, and they said, yeah, and then shut up too. And you're going to make a difference. And I would have thought that they had been with Jerry pulling up those weeds I told you about. And giving a little too much of that. Because that sounds crazy. I mean, it does sound crazy. Life is kind of like that. Life is kind of like that. And the other part of life that I think that we touch each other about is that we all have different passions. We all feel in our heart about something very strongly, about the environment, which is your student government. And I think it was Georgia who made that film. Is that Georgia? She made that film, and you could tell that was a very passionate person who put that film together about the environment, to try to teach us something about the environment. Now, as I walked across the country and got all the studied environment formally, and all the way up to a PhD level, there was something going on in between the universities, in between the formal education, the walking, and meeting people, and being with people. And I met, you can imagine walking across the United States. I don't know if you can. Now, parents were deathly afraid. They did not want me to walk across the United States. They didn't think me as a black person could walk across America and survive. And so they were really, really honestly afraid. And I tell you, there were times when I was afraid. But it all worked out. And I had some amazing experiences that taught me about environment. And that one was, the biggest one was that people were part of the environment. People were so much part of the environment that our first opportunity to treat the environment in a sustainable way, or even to figure out what that meant, was how we treated each other. And so the first thing I said after thanking people for being there is that the environment is about how we treat each other. And that became my message. That became my message. Yes, it's about pollution. Yes, it's about climate change. Yes, it's about human-made ugliness, loss of species, all those things. But it's really basically about how we look at each other and how we treat each other. If you can figure that out, then you're one step ahead. But take this passion of walking, take this passion of not knowing about what's going to happen in the future, and take your first step in how you want to live your life, how you want to make a difference, how you want to change the world. Because it really is up to you. I'm an old man now. I'm like, God, I was 27 when I started, 26 when I started, and now I'm 70. So all these years I've been working on environment and walking, and I take students for walks. I teach at the university. I take my students out, and we walk back across the United States. We're walking back across the United States. I travel around the world, and I walk with other students, high school students, across the United States, and across China, across Singapore, across Asia. And the reason why is because people are part of the environment. Each of you are part of the environment, and how we treat each other is a really very important part of what's going to happen in the environment. So I wonder if my 20 minutes is, have a little more time? Oh, okay. So I guess I just want to end by saying I think that if you understand that environment is just more than, you know, the science of it. It's more than the physical, what you see, the rain and the climate change, all important parts of it. But it all begins with how we treat each other, and that is, I think, trying to make that connection, trying to have you experience the oil spill. You know, find out what that oil spill is for you, to make you have that, what they call a moment of obligation and experience, when in your experience, you see something that needs to happen, something that needs to change. And it may be crazy and people may look at you and say, well, why are you looking at that, Gilda? Why are you doing that, Rhonda? Why are you saying it that way, Bob? But you have to just make that first step, and the next step, and the next step, and the next step. And in the end, you have to have the faith that you're doing it not just for yourself, but for all of us. And you'll make a difference. That's what I believe. So I want to thank you for having me. I'm finishing my tune, which is called Life Celebration.
Dear future generations, I think I speak for the rest of us when I say, sorry. Sorry we left you with our mess of a planet. Sorry that we were too caught up in our own doings to do something. Sorry we listened to people who made excuses to do nothing. I hope you forgive us. We just didn't realize how special the earth was. Like a marriage gone wrong. We didn't know what we had until it was gone. For example, I'm guessing you probably know it as the Amazon desert, right? Well, believe it or not, it was once called the Amazon rainforest, and there were billions of trees there, all of them gorgeous, and oh, you don't know much about trees, do you? Well, let me tell you, trees are amazing. I mean, we literally breathe the air they are creating. They clean up our pollution, our carbon. They store and purify water, give us medicine that cures our diseases, food that feeds us, which is why I'm so sorry to tell you that we burn them down. Cut them down with brutal machines, horrific, at a rate of 40 football fields every minute. That's 50% of all the trees in the world gone in the last 100 years. Why? For this. And that wouldn't make me so sad if it weren't so many pictures of leaves on it. You know, when I was a child, I read how the Native Americans had such consideration for the planet that they felt responsible for how they left the land for the next 7 generations. Which brings me great sorrow, because most of us today don't even care about tomorrow. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we put profit above people, greed above need, the rule of gold above the golden rule. I'm sorry we use nature as a credit card with no spending limit, overdrafting animals to extinction, stealing your chance to ever see their uniqueness or become friends with them. Sorry we poison the ocean so much that you can't even swim in them. But most of all, I'm sorry about our mindset, because we had the nerve to call this destruction progress. Hey Fox News, if you don't think climate change is a threat, I dare you to interview the thousands of homeless people in Bangladesh. See, while you were in your penthouse nestled, their homes were literally washed away beneath their feet due to rising sea levels. And Sarah Palin, you said that you love the smell of fossil fuels. Well, I urge you to talk to the kids of Beijing who are forced to wear pollution masks just to go to school. See, you can ignore this, but the thing about truth is, it can be denied, not avoided. So I'm sorry, future generations. I'm sorry that our footprint became a sinkhole and not a garden. I'm sorry that we paid so much attention to ISIS and very little to how fast the ice is melting in the Arctic. I'm sorry we doomed you, and I'm sorry we couldn't find another planet in time to move to. You know what? Cut the beat. I'm not sorry. This future, I do not accept it, because an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We can redirect this. How? Let me suggest that if a farmer sees a tree that is unhealthy, they don't look at the branches to diagnose it, they look at the root. So like that farmer, we must look at the root and not to the branches of government, not to the politicians run by corporations. We are the root, we are the foundation, this generation. It is up to us to take care of this planet. It is our only home. We must globally warm our hearts and change the climate of our souls and realize that we are not apart from nature, we are a part of nature. And to betray nature is to betray us. To save nature is to save us. Because whatever you're fighting for, racism or poverty, feminism, gay rights, or any type of equality, it won't matter in the least. Because if we don't all work together to save the environment, we will be equally extinct.
So I think I'm going to answer some questions, or try to answer some questions. And Melanie's going to help me here. Anybody can ask me.
I have like 5 questions. Can everybody hear me? Did you ever see Gene again?
Oh, yeah, I did. Did I ever see Gene again? And Gene was my very best friend. Gene was like 40 years older than me. And she was a standard oil heiress, right? And she had discovered something. This is a really very interesting story. She had discovered something about her family, that her family had come from the South, in Alabama, and one of her ancestors with 20 pounds of gold, and he was a freed slave. who would cross the United States with 20 pounds of gold to buy land for other freed slaves and set up a community there. That together with the native population of California passed as white people. And because they knew about what was coming. And how did you pass as a white person back in the gold rush time? It was that you built a city hall or a county seat, and when someone was born, you just wrote in the birth certificate, white person. Because the Indians knew, the indigenous and Native Americans knew that if they weren't, their land would be taken. And so they were passing as white people. And when this came to light, she looked it up, she did all the research and all the records, and she came out, she was a debutante. And she came out in the San Francisco paper and she said, it's funny because this is true. It's not, I'm not making this up. And she came out in the San Francisco newspaper, the Examiner, and said, I've discovered my family, we're not white people, we're African American and Native American, and maybe there were some people from Europe there that were part of it. And they decided to put her in the conservative. They took her money away, had a secret meeting in the courthouse in Marin County, took her money away, and said, of course she's crazy. And she spent the rest of her time, that's what she thought she was going to get a lot of money from. She thought that they were going to have a big court case and it was all going to come out. And, but she died wishing that that happened, that it came out. And when I was in South America, in 1995 I stopped. 1995 I started changing, I used motorized vehicles to fly back and then go back to South America and then continue walking. But I flew back home, scared my parents because they didn't know I was going to come home. And I went to see Jean, who was ill. And she died just a little while later. She had thyroid cancer. And the thyroid cancer that she had, it came from a release of, a radioactive release up at, what's the name of that? It's a reactor in Washington, D.C., Washington State. It begins with an H, and I can't think of the name. It's just
Hanson, they're saying Hanson. Hanson?
Yeah, it's like that. But it's she caught this. She got cancer because that release happened. They didn't say anything about it, and then finally, came out to light. And they waited until everybody died before they could settle the suit.
Now, Doc, I have a few questions. Just bear with me. And how many states have you been to? How many states have you been to?
How many states?
Yes, sir.
I couldn't tell you. I never counted them.
We're kindred spirits.
But it's like I walked through, let me see, California, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, I forgot Oregon, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Did you count those?
I counted those. It was,
I never even heard of it.
What was the most environmentally disturbing thing that you saw in your journeys in the 17 years of silence?
The most environmentally disturbing, the first thing is that what got me walking, which was the oil pollution and birds dying, and they couldn't do anything about it. But the most environmentally thing that I see is happening now is that we have this racial and poverty and discord on the planet. And it's not just here, it's how we look at each other, because we're all human beings. And there is no such thing as race. I mean, it's a cultural manifestation. We make it up. You know, we look different, of course, but as far as there's no biological basis for race. There is cultural differences, yeah. But I see that as being the thing that we kill each other and, you know, that's the big issue.
And this will be my last question. My question, hopefully I'll talk to you after, is what is one thing that these high school kids can do that can help, you know, 'cause they can't walk, you know, for 17 years, or they could. They're going to choose not to. What's something like stop using plastic water bottles, you know, just recycle, I don't need to wipe their butt less, I don't know, whatever. What is your best suggestion? And then I have to get the microphone up because I might
Based on, you know, what I see is just to be involved in the discussion, the environmental discussion, and realize that it's really about human rights and poverty and, you know, economic equity, gender equality, civil rights, all the ways we relate to each other. It's really about how the environment is about what's going on in the environment. And so it's because we're all part of it, and that's it. You know, I mean, and who knows what you're going to find out. I mean, I don't know. Like there are going to be ways to deal with different issues with water pollution, with air pollution, all these things. You're going to come up with things that I'm not even able to think of. You know, you're what they call, you're the future. You know, I heard people say, yeah, you know, John, you're the future. When I was a little kid, right? You're the future. You are. I am, I was, you are. You are the future, so you have to figure this out. And I have great faith in you, because if I could change from the person that I was to be the person that I am now, I have the utmost faith that you all can do that. We're running out of time.
To raise awareness about the deterioration of our planet. Every day, the things we do as a school and individually contribute to the dwindling state of our Earth. In just a few hundred years, maybe less, we may not have the basic resources that sustain our lives. Whether the results are directly in front of you right now or not, it is happening. And it's our generation's responsibility to turn it around. You can make a difference every day in saving our planet. Unplugging electronics that aren't being used, shortening your showers, turning off unused lights, finding alternatives to driving, recycling, and so much more are little routines we must adapt to. For our well-being and for the health of the future, go green before green goes. There is no planet B. Thank you.
So on that note, it is time for us
The carbon. Okay. It's like natural.
It's like what you leave on the earth. Your trash. And I feel like
That's like the atmosphere reflecting race and something or
Yeah. Okay. Alright.
the layer in the atmosphere that protects us from UV rays.
When you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse, and the tears come streaming.
The 10 hottest years ever measured. They've all occurred in the last 14 years.
Lose something you can't replace. When you love someone but it goes to waste.
Temperature increases are taking place all over the world, and that's causing stronger storms.
Lights will guide you home. And ignite your bones. And I will try to fix you.
That was a straw sliding the turtle.
you're lying.
Yeah,
Went off of a landfill, went into the ocean, got stuck in the turtle.
It was pretty painful to watch, I think, especially like when the images of towns getting destroyed and that the turtle that was like red chicken bombs.
It was very powerful.
Eye-opening.
The things that humans are doing, it's ignorance.
The imagery in the video was pretty moving. It just shows like how it's really impacting us.
There once was a time when everything was green and everything was clean. You could walk around. Yeah.
I feel touched, like I feel like I should be like trying to do something.
Kind of makes you want to like take a stand and like try to fix these stuff.
No one that I know or including myself is informed about anything, so.
Hey, I just feel like hard work when you're not really going to do anything. They're not living.
Why don't you think you're going to do anything?
Because people, they're selfish. It's just, that's what the world is today. Like, it's,
Do you think if everyone stops being selfish and started to care that we could change?
The right way to think that other people will take it upon themselves to do something about it, so I won't have to. Like, the burden of responsibility will fall on like other people, and if everybody's thinking that, then nobody's gonna do anything.
Yes, it's eye-opening. Yes, they feel sympathetic at that moment, but then they go back to their daily lives and it doesn't affect them.
Alright, so after watching it, do you feel like you want to learn more about the environment?
Yeah.
Alright, so do you want to learn more about the environment after watching this video?
of course.
And so you would want to learn more about the environment after watching this video?
We're going to have to learn the hard way. One day we're going to walk outside and start having heart attacks. People's bodies just going to be dropping. One by one by one.
I think everyone needs to be aware first in order to make any change afterwards.
And then
Until that day, no, because it's going to be too late. Nobody ever going to do anything until it's too late.
on a global scale. As you probably already know, this year's theme is environmental awareness. Usually, SGA members would have gone to English classes yesterday to present an in-depth lesson plan on this year's topic. However, because of snow days earlier in the year, we will be presenting on April 7th after spring break. Throughout this week, we set up informative displays in the Commons in order to elaborate on specific topics. On Monday, we focused on water usage and how much we waste. On Tuesday, we showed how our daily activities can contribute to air pollution and the greenhouse effect. On Wednesday, our focus was to raise awareness of deforestation and endangered species. On Thursday, we concluded with a display of the recycling process and ways we can help solve these environmental issues. Whether you're passionate about saving our environment or any other issues you would like to bring awareness about, we encourage you to think about getting involved with the SGA. It's a great way to increase school spirit and to give back to your community. Applications will be available this coming Monday, March 14th in room 153 with Mrs. Crusher. Today, we will complete the 2016 spring project with this assembly and a guest speaker, Dr. John Francis, to share his experiences in the hopes that they will inspire you to take action. Now to Justin to introduce our speaker.
Now we would like to introduce to you Dr. John Francis, a renowned environmentalist and UN environmental ambassador who began his famous pilgrimage across North and South America in 1973 as he boycotted the use of motorized vehicles for nearly 22 years. Dr. Francis spent 17 of those years in voluntary silence, carrying a message of sustainable development and respect for our planet. Dr. Francis has since been nicknamed the Planet Walker for his efforts and has founded the environmental organization Planet Walk, whose core mission is to promote environmental education, spread Francis's message of environmental responsibility, and ultimately create a sustainable future. Dr. Francis has appeared on TED and CNN 60 Minutes detailing his experiences at Planet Walk, and is now here to share his story. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. John Francis.
It's graduation time again, and you can be sure that there will be many speeches urging young people to go out there and change the world. And those same young people will be wondering how. Well, tonight we have the story of one man who set about changing the world by first changing himself.
Our story begins on a misty night in 1971 when two oil tankers collide beneath the Golden Gate Bridge, spilling more than 500,000 gallons of crude into the bay. At that time, John Francis was just another hippie living in Westmoreland County. But when he saw the oozing sludge and dying birds, he wanted to protest in a way that others thought was crazy. Francis wanted to stop riding in cars.
And I found myself on the road walking, and I said, well, I'm already walking here. I'm just going to keep walking.
With his banjo as his companion, John Francis challenged anyone who would listen to believe in his mission.
I found myself arguing with my friends if one person could make a difference by not riding in an automobile.
So he had another idea. To stop the arguments, he would simply stop talking.
I decided that I would stop speaking just for one day to give my community a gift of my silence, because John was a big talker.
This is Francis back then. He was 27 years old on the day he stopped talking in order to truly listen. That day's silence lasted 17 years.
When I first stopped speaking, I could hear all the conversations pretty much that I ever had. After about a month of not speaking, they soon went away.
Without the conversations, John had only to listen to himself, and what he heard disturbed him. He realized that he had been living a lie about who he was as a black man in a white world.
What I saw in the media was I could be a buffoon or I could be a criminal, but could I be the person I am right now? And I didn't see that person. It took me to just stop talking until I said, oh my God, there you are. and then I just rediscovered who I was. And I didn't need to lie anymore. Well, I couldn't lie because I didn't talk. I mean, I just couldn't do it.
Francis went from being this know-it-all to someone who wanted to know more. So he began a pilgrimage that left his footprints across the country.
John Francis. Linda Lindell.
Yeah, taking a ride. Walked all the way in.
I saw America. I heard America speak to me. And I was very taken by what my experience was.
What Francis didn't know at that time was that he was ahead of his time, on the forefront of what would become a movement, environmentalism. When he found that Southern Oregon University offered a new course in environmental studies, he walked to Ashland and enrolled. He then walked to Missoula, Montana to get a master's degree, eventually ending up at the University of Wisconsin to get his PhD. Along the way, he also taught a discussion class. Remember, all without speaking.
Sometimes I would make these signs like so. And my class would sit around and they go, what's he saying? What's he saying? Oh, I think he's talking about clear cutting. No, that's not clear cutting. He was using a handsaw and he wouldn't clear cut. You can clear cut with a handsaw. I think he's talking about selective forestry. And I would just kind of back out because this is a discussion class and let the discussion go on.
And Francis's education was evolving as well.
I thought environment was about human-made ugliness and pollution and endangered species. I started to realize that environment was really much more than that. That it involved, human rights and civil rights and economic equity and how we treat each other when we meet each other.
All along his journey from West Coast to East, the man who walked and didn't talk was being heard. In the 22 years he spent trekking across America, the once counterculture concept of environmentalism had become mainstream. By the time he arrived in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Coast Guard invited him to write pollution regulations for the nation's waterways, and the United Nations appointed him environmental ambassador.
I couldn't have dreamed that up. I couldn't have seen it. When people said, one person can't make a difference, I have to say there were doubts sometimes, as I'm walking, and I am alone, and I am just a black man with a banjo walking across America. I think we just make that commitment to make the journey. And once we commit ourselves to doing it, we change. We change ourselves from just sitting on the fence thinking about it to actually jumping in the field and making a mad dash on a slow walk. And I think that's our journey. That's all of our journeys. I think each one of us has that journey, that potential in ourselves to do that.
John Francis just published a book called Planet Walker and is getting ready for another walk across the United States.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here and having me here today. I usually start off by saying thank you very much for being here. And my kids, they always, when they hear me speak, if I don't say that, they remind me those are the first words that I said when I started speaking. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, because when I started speaking in Washington back in 1990, those were the words that I said. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for being here. And it was because if no one's there to hear you speak, then there's no communication. And those were the first words after 17 years I was going to speak. And my mother, who was sitting in the audience, she jumped up. She said, "Hallelujah, John is talking." After 17 years of not speaking, my mom got really excited. And my dad, he said, "That's one. That's one." He said, he really wanted me to be in a car too. He says, you drive in a car, that would be really great. And for me, this was the first time I actually heard my voice, and so I didn't really recognize it in such a long time. So I kind of turned around to look and see who was saying what I was thinking. Who was saying what I was thinking? And I realized it was me. And I thought that was pretty funny, that I didn't recognize my voice, and I started to laugh. I started to laugh, and I was chuckling there. My dad looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, look at him, he really is crazy." But I wanted to thank the student government for inviting me here on this really special day for their project on the environment. And Melanie, I see sitting here, Melanie and Charles and Georgia, she's over there. They all got together and worked very hard and very diligently, because I lived in Cape May, New Jersey, so we Skyped and emailed each other back and forth. And that's why I'm here. So I want to thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for having me come to speak to you. And I have, as you saw this, I had this amazing kind of thing happen to me, because I was just as environmentally illiterate as some of the students who were here in the video that Georgia put together in the essay. Well, yeah, I'm an environmentalist. What's that, right? And, I didn't know anything about the environment except what I felt. So when I saw the oil spill happen, it just got me somewhere in my heart. And I think you'll probably realize that, you see things happening in the news and in your community, and it may just touch you somewhere in an emotional place, or maybe a tear will come down your high head. Well, that's what happened to me when I saw the oil spill. And I went to see that spill, and I went with my friend, my girlfriend, Jean, who was with me, and we drove to see the oil spill. We heard about it on the radio, so we drove down to see the oil spill. You see anything yet, Jean? No, I don't see anything. Now, Jean didn't really sound that way. That's what we call a theatrical device. Theater majors here. Theatrical device. But Jean said to me, she said, no, she didn't see anything, but what we could do is we could smell it. And this is the first time I ever saw or ever felt, ever smelled an environmental insult. I could read about it in the newspaper, but I couldn't really get the tactile, I couldn't really feel it, so it didn't mean anything to me. Much like climate change and, air pollution someplace else. Not here, not on me. And so, because I never felt anything, I never did anything. It just never was not my issue. But this time, it was something that I really took notice to. I could see the birds washing up on the beach, covered with oil. I could see them covered with oil, and it smelled bad. And on the way back, I said to Jean, Jean, we have to do something about this. What, baby? This is just a theatrical deal. And she said, what do we have to do? And I said, I think we should get out of our cars and start walking. You know, give up riding in cars. And Jean, she just looked at me. I don't think that really went with her. She said, you know, we don't have enough money to do that. We don't have enough money. And I thought about it. I said, yeah, we're going to need money. She said, you're going to have money in order to do something like that, to give yourself enough time to walk. Because if we walk without money, then what's going to happen is people are just going to say, look at those hippies walking. They don't even have enough money to take a bus. This was way before Forrest Gump. Ran, though, didn't he? But people they said, is that movie about you, John? No, not Bubba. So we decided that we would just forget about that oil spill, and we drove home, and then there was a good friend of mine, ours, who was a deputy sheriff. Deputy sheriff in Marin County, in our little town. Our little town we lived in was very small, smaller than the school here. It's only about 300 of us lived in this town, 350. And so we knew everybody. Everybody was kind of friends. So when this deputy sheriff passed away by accident, he was the same age as I was. He was in a boating accident with his family, and his family was saved, but he was perished, and we never found him. And so we decided that we were going to go for a walk and celebrate Jerry's life. That's his name, Jerry Tanner. I get to say that, Jerry Tanner. And it makes me go back and think about that time. And so we want to walk for 20 miles over the hill to a nightclub, and we were going to dance and celebrate Jerry Tanner's life. How many people here have walked 20 miles? Oh, less than the last group. But that's good, you know. 20 miles is a good walk, But if you know that if you walk 20 miles, if you leave in the afternoon, say about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're not going to get to where you're going until sometime in the morning. And that was when the group was just closing up. There was a local group, and they were going to drive back to our home. And they said, John, Gene, you guys walked all that way. Come hear the band. Well, that's great. Come on, get in the car. We'll drive you back. And we decided, no, we were going to rest up and walk back the next day. I'm telling you this because this is the moment that things really changed for me. I was on a walk back, 20-mile walk back, and I was thinking about Jerry. Jerry had everything as far as I was concerned. He was a deputy sheriff. He had a job, a good job, his beautiful wife and lovely home, and kids, and a white picket fence around his house. He was living the American dream. I said, he's got everything. And we were the same age. He was 26. And just like that, Jerry was gone. Jerry was gone. And it made me think, and I was thinking about it as I'm walking back, I said, Jean is talking about we can't really walk until we get money to walk. And she has some court case that she's working on. She says, we're going to get lots of money, and that's when we're going to walk. But I said to Jean, look, Jean, we're already walking. So why don't we just keep walking? Just keep walking. And Jean looked at me, and she had all the love in her heart, and she said, bye. Well, she wasn't that cold, she didn't. She said that she had stuff to do and that she really couldn't give up riding in cars. She needed the car to fight this court case, and that maybe when she got the money then she would start. But I kept walking. I kept walking, and as I walked, people would stop, because I lived in a little town, 300 people. Everybody knew right away that I was walking, that I wasn't accepting rides. And people started thinking, well, that was pretty crazy, John. What are you going to do? What do you think one person is going to accomplish walking? What is one person going to accomplish walking? And I would argue with them about, you know, the oil from the cars and the people needing oil and we're getting in the water. And they just kind of laughed at me and said, John, one person isn't going to make a difference. One person can't make a difference. Well, I was kind of upset, really, because I guess I had imagined that if I had started walking, there would be legions of people who were so upset about the oil spill, they would be following me. Come on, let's go. Yeah, we're all walking. No, it was just me. And all I'm doing is arguing with people about it. And here I live in a beautiful place, and all I do is fight. Argue. So I decided on my birthday that I was going to turn 27, that I was going to stop talking for one day. And that one day led to another day, and I kept learning and then to another day and another day. And the first thing I learned, I just want to tell you, is like, well, I learned that I didn't listen. That at some point in my life, I had stopped listening, and consequently, had stopped learning. What I would do, and I don't know if any of you guys are guilty of this, but I sure was I would just listen just enough to think that I knew what someone else was going to say. And then I would stop listening and start thinking about what I was going to say back when they finished talking, irregardless of whatever they said. And sometimes it was completely different than what I thought. Didn't make any difference. I still had in my mind what I was going to say. So that ended communication. And also, it ended my learning, because I never really listened to what someone else had to say. So on that first day of not speaking and the second day of not speaking, I decided I should do it another day, and before long, it was a month had gone by. And I decided that, well, I'm going to not speak until my next birthday. Well, the two things, the not speaking and the not riding in cars, now really changed my life. I had to write my parents and tell them, you know, that I wasn't going to speak, and so I couldn't call them on the phone. The last time I called my dad on the phone and talked about not riding in cars, he asked me why I didn't do this when I was 16. I said, I didn't know about the environment then. Well, there are two things like I wanted to say about a moment of obligation in experience. And that's when something happens to you on the inside that says you have to do something. You have to make a choice. You have to do some kind of action, whatever it is. And it might seem crazy. And what I was doing, walking and not talking, really seemed pretty crazy to all the people around me, particularly my family. And my parents back in Philadelphia and I in California were having a very difficult time with my other members of the family and their friends. They would say, well, you've seen Johnny, how's he doing? And they go, well, no, you know, actually, he doesn't ride in cars, so he can't come visit us. I said, well, yeah, but you talk to him, right? No, he gave up speaking, so we can't talk to him over the telephone. He said, he's in prison, right, John? He said, Well, no, that would be easy. No, that's true. He just doesn't ride in cars and doesn't talk, and that was something that he just kind of had to deal with, I guess. So I have this moment where I'm walking, and for 20 years, for 17 years, I'm walking until I finally get across the other side of the United States. On the way, I stop and go to school, and then I get there, my PhD, and I'm in Washington, D.C., and I start speaking again. And once I start speaking again, the next thing I know is I'm getting calls from the Coast Guard that they wanted to read my dissertation on oil spills. And from the United Nations, they wanted to have me be a goodwill ambassador for the environment. Now, if I had started 20 years ago, 17 years ago, when I started, and I knew what was going to happen, well, that would be one thing, but I didn't know. In fact, after a while, I wondered if this was really going to do anything, if it really meant anything. And if someone had said to me, John, you know, if you really want to make a difference, just get out of your car and start walking. You know, and as I walked a little ways, they'd say, and shut up too. You're really going to make a difference. I wouldn't have believed them. I would have thought that they were, well, let's just say I would have thought they were crazy. But that's the kind of thing that happens when you have your own moment of obligation, when you feel that there's something that you have to do, but it's usually something impossible, that the odds are just so stacked against you that you say, I'm not going to do that because nothing will come of it. That's the thing that you need to do. When you think that the odds are so stacked against you that nothing will come of it, that's what it is. That's the moment of obligation. That's when you have to take hold of that idea, that feeling, and take that step. And the next step. And people are going to be saying, oh, but Barbara, that's crazy. You can't do that. John, you can't do that. Willie, forget it. Forget that. That's not going to do nothing. Here, do this instead. But you're going to take another step. And another step. And eventually people are going to be going, how did you know to do that? That's really amazing. I would have never thought of that. I would have never thought of that. So what I have come here to say to you, because you are the future, and it's really amazing because I remember someone was saying that to me back when they said, John, you know, you're the future. I go, they must say that to everybody. Well, that's the truth. You are the future. You are what's going to make this happen. I mean, I got to walk across the United States, earn a PhD, but the education that I got in between the degrees, the education that I got walking on the road, meeting people, and I mean, I met thousands and thousands of people walking. It took me 7 years to walk across the United States, 7 years, and a lot of people put me up. A lot of people fed me. A lot of people clothed me. A lot of people took me into their homes, and people that my parents would be afraid to say, John, you're not going to make it across the country. You're a black man. You can't walk across the United States. You can't, it's not for you. Well, someone would see me walking down the road, and I'll just give you this example. And they'd be walking down the road playing my banjo. The car would drive up. Where are you going, boy? You play that banjo? Damn, you do play that banjo. You need a place to stay tonight? you come on right down that holler right there, and that big house right on the side of the road, that's where we live. You come on there and we're going to feed you and put you up for the night. I'd walk there. These are the people my dad said to watch out for. I walked to that house. Get in here, boy, get in here. We got food for you, victuals here. Come on, sit down by the table. Sit down at the table. Look up on the wall, and the wall's filled with guns. You ain't seen that many guns on the wall before, have you, boy? Well, don't worry, they ain't from you. Gets the phone out. He dials the number. Willie Mae, Willie Mae. Remember that boy walking down the road you seen with the banjo? That's right, he's here. No, we can't come to your house. We're having him here for dinner. They weren't going to eat me either. We're having him here for dinner, and he's staying overnight, and he's going in the morning with Billy Bob to school for show and tell. Now, that's a compilation of a bunch of people, but that happened all across the country, all across America. So when I got to the other side of the United States, the one thing that really impressed me, besides having a PhD in environmental studies, was that people are part of the environment. And because people are part of the environment, how we treat each other when we meet each other is really our first opportunity to work and treat the environment in a positive way. And so when I started speaking, that's what I wanted to talk about. That was my message. That's what I learned. That environment was about our interactions with each other. That environment was about human rights and civil rights and economic equity and gender equality and all the ways that we work together, all the ways that we relate with each other. So yes, environment is about pollution. It is about climate change. It is about loss of species and habitat. But it's also about how we treat one another. And this is, I can't impress it, but while we're doing all this other stuff, all the other good work, we have to work on this interrelationship with each other. We have to work on how we live together on the planet. So some of the things that we do, what can we do? What can you do? Well, I think the student government here has made a really good case for a lot of the things that we do, how we recycle. You know, that was the only thing I heard about is recycling. Recycling. Look in your own life. Look personally in your own life of what you can do. Now, everybody can't get up and walk across the United States or be quiet for 17 years. But we can learn to listen to one another. You know, maybe we can listen to each other a little bit better. Because I guarantee you, listening to someone is going to make a great difference in the world. There's an exercise that we do where we take A and B. And A and B could be anybody. A is supposed to say something that really means something really important to them. Really important to them. And B is supposed to be listening, but looking at their watch going on. And looking at their phone. We didn't have phones like that in this point. But looking at their phone and maybe doing a text. And while A is saying something that's like life-altering for them, B is really looking at the window and dust. Just for 3 minutes. At the end of that exercise, we asked A, so A, how do you feel? I feel worthless. I don't feel like I was appreciated. The person wasn't listening to me. Wasn't important. I don't even want to do this exercise again. And the time it dragged on and on and on. There's too much time. We had to reverse that. Where now A or B was telling A something important about what they knew, what they felt. And A was supposed to really listen and nod. We've done these exercises where, yes, nod, and eye contact, all those things. After the 3 minutes was up, how did you feel? It made me feel great. It was wonderful. The only problem, I felt that I was worth something, what I was saying meant something to someone, and there was one problem. What was that problem? There was just not enough time. Now we used 3 minutes. But the first person thought there was too much time. The second person thought there was not enough time. And that it made them feel really good. So, think about that. That if you listen to someone, you can make them feel really good. Just by listening to them. And you might learn something too. That's the other thing. You might learn something that you didn't know. So, number one, listen to one another. Be sure to listen to each other. Number two, it may be crazy. Whatever someone else says may sound crazy. Whatever you think, whatever you say, whatever you want to do, it may be crazy. But if you feel it, if you feel that, go with it. Go with it. My father came out to see me once. He said, because my mother made him. He said, well, your son's not talking and he doesn't ride in a car, so you have to go out there and see him. My dad came out and he called my mother back up. He says, look, he's doing something out here. He doesn't ride in cars. He doesn't talk. People seem to like him. He doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs. There's nothing I can say. I can't make him do anything because he's not hurting anybody. It's that crazy thing though. So my father went back home and said, my mother said, well, how about bringing him home to Philadelphia? My dad said, no, this wouldn't work in Philadelphia. So what is it that you have inside you? That's that crazy feeling, that crazy thing you want to do that, oh, that's impossible, that wouldn't work. That's what you need to look for. That's what you need to share with us. That's what you need to make your own moment, have your own moment of obligation. And so, I think my time is up, or it's close to being up, so I'm going to end with my I never played the banjo before. I mean, before I stopped riding in cars and stopped talking. So I just picked that up and started playing on the way. When I left California and I started walking across the United States and around the world, I walked across the United States and then the length of South America after I had finished working at the Coast Guard. I picked this banjo up and carried it with me. And whenever someone said they knew how to play the banjo or they had a tune, I gave it to them and they taught me. But this tune that I'm going to play now, that I'm just finishing with, is what I started out with. It's called Celebration of Life. And so I'm going to finish with that tune, the Celebration of Life. And hopefully, when we leave here, we're going to go out and celebrate life.
Dear future generations, I think I speak for the rest of us when I say, sorry. Sorry we left you with our mess of a planet. Sorry that we were too caught up in our own doings to do something. Sorry we listened to people who made excuses to do nothing. I hope you forgive us. We just didn't realize how special the earth was. Like a marriage gone wrong, we didn't know what we had until it was gone. For example, I'm guessing you probably know it as the Amazon desert, right? Well, believe it or not, it was once called the Amazon rainforest, and there were billions of trees there, all of them gorgeous, and oh, you don't know much about trees, do you? Well, let me tell you, trees are amazing. I mean, we literally breathe the air they are creating. They clean up our pollution, our carbon. They store and purify water, give us medicine that cures our diseases, food that feeds us, which is why I'm so sorry to tell you that we burn them down, cut them down with brutal machines, horrific, at a rate of 40 football fields every minute. That's 50% of all the trees in the world gone in the last 100 years. Why? For this. And that wouldn't make me so sad if it weren't so many pictures of leaves on it. You know, when I was a child, I read how the Native Americans had such consideration for the planet that they felt responsible for how they left the land for the next 7 generations. Which brings me great sorrow, because most of us today don't even care about tomorrow. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we put profit above people, greed above need, the rule of gold above the golden rule. I'm sorry we use nature as a credit card with no spending limit, overdrafting animals to extinction, stealing your chance to ever see their uniqueness or become friends with them. Sorry we poison the ocean so much that you can't even swim in them. But most of all, I'm sorry about our mindset, because we had the nerve to call this destruction progress. Hey Fox News, if you don't think climate change is a threat, I dare you to interview the thousands of homeless people in Bangladesh. See, while you were in your penthouse nestle, their homes were literally washed away beneath their feet due to rising sea levels. And Sarah Palin, you said that you love the smell of fossil fuels. Well, I urge you to talk to the kids of Beijing who are forced to wear pollution masks just to go to school. See, you can ignore this, but the thing about truth is, it can be denied, not avoided. So I'm sorry, future generations. I'm sorry that our footprint became a sinkhole and not a garden. I'm sorry that we paid so much attention to ISIS and very little to how fast the ice is melting in the Arctic. I'm sorry we doomed you, and I'm sorry we couldn't find another planet in town to move to. You know what? Cut the beat. I'm not sorry. This future, I do not accept it. Because an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We can redirect this. How? Let me suggest that if a farmer sees a tree that is unhealthy, they don't look at the branches to diagnose it, they look at the root. So like that farmer, we must look at the root and not to the branches of government, not to the politicians run by corporations. We are the root, we are the foundation, this generation. It is up to us to take care of this planet. It is our only home. We must globally warm our hearts and change the climate of our souls and realize that we are not apart from nature, we are a part of nature. And to betray nature is to betray us. To save nature is to save us. Because whatever you're fighting for, racism or poverty, feminism, gay rights, or any type of equality, it won't matter in the least. Because if we don't all work together to save the environment, we will be equally extinct.
for observing our initiatives to raise awareness about the deterioration of our we may not have the basic resources that sustain our lives. Whether the results are directly in front of you now or not, it is happening, and it's our generation's responsibility to turn it around. You can make a difference every day in saving our planet. Unplugging electronics that aren't being used, shortening your showers, turning off unused lights, finding alternatives to driving, recycling, and so much more are the little routines we must adapt to. For our own well-being and the health of our future,